episode 102 of Pursuit of Balance. What is up, everybody? Today we're going to talk about something that I think is probably one of the most powerful life hacks in growing in anything. And this is obviously today going to be more of an example of a personal thing that I was going through this week. A good thing, not a bad thing. But the power of networking, right? And the power of obviously, something I talk about with our second dimension a lot is, the importance of having a good community and having a good environment and a good surrounding, but the influence that has in your life. So a little inside secrets for all you Palo Alto folks. Some of you might know that we are moving out at the end of March of next year, or that was when our lease was ending up, which is, as Evan and I were just talking about, definitely a sad moment because this is baby number one, and being somewhere for 8 years as a first-time business owner definitely has a huge impact on where you started it from, but also very exciting. So we kind of been looking around for the last couple months, toured a spot with Cisco, and it was in downtown Mountain View, right behind Whole Foods, right behind, between, Verve Coffee's there, Nobu's right around the block, all these, it's just a great spot in downtown Palo Alto, right? And I never really thought of downtown ever being a possibility for FL because I was like, there's no fucking way we can afford it, and there is no way in hell that the parking is going to be something that's easily accessible for our clients. And we ended up finding something that, I don't know about affordability. It's definitely still expensive. It's fucking $18,000 a month, but that being said, we're super stoked. We're upgrading to where Reach Fitness used to be, 6,000 square foot building. Negotiated all the terms that we needed to make it work, and it ended up working. So we're really, really excited on it. So basically what we're doing is we're going to be kind of breaking up the gym almost into 3 sections technically, but maybe even 2, but mainly 3. Is I'm going to expand kind of the personal service side of the business, right? So we're going to basically buy all brand new equipment for the classes, keep the classes the main thing because that's obviously been the main thing the whole time. But, one-on-one training has been something that's kind of grown relatively aggressive in the last probably year of Palo Alto's location. So I was like, well, if we decide to upgrade the space, I need to bring on more personal trainers and hire, obviously, maybe 2 or 3 people in the beginning, and then I wanted to always have a chiropractor or a manual therapist or a physical therapist of some sort, something that would be complementary to what we're already doing, right? It's we already have the classes, the semi-private model, we already had the check-ins, which covered the nutrition, the mobility, we already did personal training, and now it's just we're expanding that part of it. But today's kind of podcast is talking about how the importance of network is going to get you farther in your life than anything else will, right? And it's one of those things that it's kind of like those cheesy business things that you see on the internet all the time of your net worth is your network. And it took me until my 30s probably to really understand it because the last gym build out with Mountain View, I started to be wow, I hired a whole team and got the contract. I got everything done without having to run any type of paid advertising, right? I didn't have to do a job posting. I got just through the network of the people I knew, right? And then this one, we were kind of competing against 2 other gyms for this location, and it ended up working out for us because the 2 things. Number one, our business history of being in business for 8 years, and our financials looked better than theirs. And then most importantly, it was just the fact that we had a good, relationship with the broker, right? So it's I knew John from my brother-in-law. Jesse was kind of a referral from one of our clients here. So shout out to Kyle and Kathleen for wrecking us. And it kind of just made me sit back on the car ride yesterday thinking about man, it just really goes to show you that if you know the right people, you can get into any door in any conversation in life. When I was younger, and kind of most jobs that I got into, I honestly was just you know what, I'm just gonna work really hard, make a lot of money. The idea of entrepreneurship to me at a young age was more lucrative and kind of attractive due to the fact that I was I don't ever want to be told what to do, right? So for me, I was always kind of not against networking, but I never really was a networker. I always remember my buddy Tim when we first got hired at Equinox together. He's the marketing guy, and I was always the sales guy. Meaning it was he can create conversations. He can go out and just talk to anybody. He has the gift of gab too, and just an easy flowing talker. But I was the other end of I don't like to introduce myself to people. Going out of my way to hey, go interrupt your workout or say those kind of things. It always made me uncomfortable, right? So for me, throughout my entire life, it's my friends, my social life, my work life, I've never been someone that really was outgoing and networking as kind of something that was my style or my personality. And as I've gotten older, I obviously had to kind of start creating that for myself because I was well, the only way to be really successful with my business is I got to put myself out there, right? So being on Instagram or doing marketing or introducing yourself or those things were never really comfortable things for me. But as I've slowly built the network, I really wanted to kind of help other people that maybe through their own work or journey or business, and this is probably a little bit more of a business conversation than anything today. Like, how do you provide or build a network, right? Because if we know the importance of it and the power of having a big network and how much it can do for your life and how much it can save you time and how much it can save you money and how much it can, help you win battles or arguments or debates or all these things just by having an influence and support. Influence is the thing that's obviously just one of those big, it moves the needle more than anything in life, right? So number one is just kind of to the point that I was just talking about, is like, you got to put yourself out there, right? I think this idea of being, socially shy or, keeping yourself inclusive or not really putting yourself out there on Instagram or not marketing or all these things. And I think this is something I talk to a lot of coaches and especially my team obviously on, is like, we have one of the most powerful platforms in the world nowadays to be able to showcase your skill, right? So if you are a coach of any sort, doesn't matter if you're a nutritionist, a therapist, a doctor, a personal trainer, whatever, you putting your stuff out there and providing value to other people is the thing that allows you to become valuable in the marketplace, right? And it's not just for monetary reasons, it's just for the act of, like, I think most people get into coaching because we want to help other people. We want to share the knowledge that we've learned. We want to share the journey that we've gone through that's made us successful and happier in ourselves. So the number one thing to understand, in order to build a network, you have to first just expose yourself. You have to get out there. You have to shake hands. You have to introduce yourself. You have to go to parties. You have to be more social, right? And that's something that, for me personally, was probably the hardest thing to get over, because I just always was, in a sense, socially awkward to that introductory phase of everything, right? And I've always surrounded myself with people that were good at breaking the ice. One of my best friends at the time in my early 20s was like, just the same thing. He was just always out there introducing us. He would get us into the parties. He'd get us into everywhere we go. I'm not really introducing myself. I'd sit back and I just kind of slowly work my way into the conversation, right? But I realized, obviously then owning a business, like, fuck, I don't have anyone to rely on anymore. I was like, I have people I can surround myself with that could be great with this. Like Sisso, this is one of his, like, great talents as a manager, is the fact that he is such a social butterfly, right? So getting out there, going to events, going out to clients, having lunch or having coffee dates, doing all these things, like intermingle with the clients and the potential clients that it can bring, is one of the best skill sets that he has from a networking perspective. So that was definitely number one. Number two is just like the value aspect of what I just talked about, right? So you can't build a strong network if you're not providing value or your work sucks, right? So I've always looked at business as like, okay, if there's one thing that I know that can help me grow the business, or how I can really measure the business on it being truly successful and working by itself, was based off the amount of referrals that it was getting, right? Like, if my business ran off strictly referrals and it was able to grow, that means we're doing the right thing. So something that I say in team meetings all the time is like, if we're relying on paid marketing for us to acquire customers, and that's the only way that we can actually grow the business, then our service is broken, right? So I want to look at the service being the thing that I really need to focus on, right? Because if I can obsess about the product, I can obsess about the service, I can then grow that thing into a potentially like self-marketing machine, right? This is one thing that, like, I idolized Steve Jobs when I was younger. It was just like, he was so obsessed about the product being perfect, right? He wasn't obsessed with the business. He wasn't obsessed with the sales. He wasn't obsessed with the marketing in the beginning. He was obsessed with the product. He was a product guy. And for me, when I got into business, like, okay, well, I want to be obsessed with the product. Like, if I just focus on being the best possible coach for my clients, or I focus on being the best possible manager for my team or my employees, then naturally that thing should start feeding itself, right? And that's kind of how I self-diagnose myself from an analytical perspective, is like, okay, well, if I'm like, me growing up Mountain View without having to do any job posting was like, okay, cool. If my team is giving me this many referrals on people that they know that would probably be good fits here or would want to work here, then that means that they're vouching for their own friends, saying that, hey, this place is good enough or legit and I want you to work here. If I had somewhere that I went that I didn't like, or I didn't like my job, I wouldn't be telling my friends about it. Like, why would I tell my friends about something that I didn't enjoy? Like, hey, I went to this restaurant, terrible, definitely go to it. Like, no one does that, right? So it's like, in order to build a network, in order to get people to start talking about you, in order to get people to start supporting you, you need to first understand that you need to be selfless enough to provide the value to that client, consumer, friend, or whatever it might be, to make sure that they actually feel supportive in the act of telling other people about it, right? So building a strong network doesn't just come from just introducing yourself and putting yourself out there. That's step one, obviously, because you can't, provide value to no one. You have to provide value to people, right? But then that value that you're providing is dependent on whatever you're doing. And this could be a work relationship thing, or this can just be a self-development, personal, social thing for you. I don't really come from a fan club of saying that you need to have a lot of friends to be a happy person socially. I think I'm kind of more in the camp that I'd rather keep my core group small. But understanding the importance of how do I build a relationship and how do I keep that relationship comes from communication, right? And that value, quote unquote, that I'm providing for my parents or my brother or my friends requires me being more proactive. And that's one thing that business was great for me on a personal side of it as well. Because personally, I was never someone that really reached out to my mom or dad. I was never someone that really reached out to my friends. Never someone that really texted first within relationships. I always waited for somebody. And not that I was trying to do it as like a gamified of like, okay, well, I'm too good, you could talk to me first. It was more like I just either was always doing something or too lazy or procrastinating it or just kind of going about my day without even thinking about it. But I was always up for it. I was always a yes man. But throughout the years, and especially since business, I've realized I'm like, you know what? It's not fair to the other people in my relationships, to my friends or my family or to my, fiance, to always expect her to do those things, or him or whatever, whoever it is. So it's like I have to be the one that's be proactively doing those things, right? And I think that proactive value that I'm providing, and the value at a friend level or a fiance, significant other level, or a family level, is you just being there for that person, right? And that's kind of like another layer to the value is like, you making people feel good around you, you being the light in those dark days for people, they subconsciously put you in such a high value for their life that they would always want to support you, not feel like there's a need to support somebody, right? Like if I would say if I was trying to help a friend out with anything, it doesn't matter if it's financial, if it's time or service, or if it's support, or if it's sending a business or whatever it might be, that the people that have always helped me and the people that have always provided me value are the ones that I'm going to do that organically and subconsciously for. The ones that are just like always asking for things, but they're never really giving anything back, those are the ones you tend to just feel like, yeah, you might do it every once in a while, but it's not something you really look forward to and say like, oh, I can't wait to help out this person. Like the people that we want to help out are the ones that are always giving. And that's where I think this term of like, okay, well, how do we define what value means to somebody? Value is you giving something to someone else, right? It is the act of giving. It's not the act of taking. As a young boy, I always was on the opposite end of it. I love receiving Christmas gifts. I love receiving birthday gifts. As I've gotten older, I've become more, and Nikki knows this better than anybody, I become awkward with gifts now. I don't like receiving stuff as much. And I've realized that like something that makes me feel good and fills my cup is actually helping other people. And I know that you can't do that by pouring from an empty cup kind of theory, that you have to be selfish enough to create a selfless life. So there's always this balance between how selfish and selfless am I going to be. But that is the value that you're providing to the marketplace, right? And when I say marketplace, that is a business term. When I say friends, family, or just significant others, it's the same exact theory. It's like, what am I doing for others, right? And that core group will grow over time, right? And don't measure it necessarily in numbers, right? Measure it in like in the active impact. Like for me, it's like every time I've thrown something out on Instagram of saying I need X, Y, and Z, I need help here, I need references, I need connections, I've somehow always have pulled through from the people around me, right? And the people around me is what made me successful, right? It's like I didn't become successful at FL, I didn't become successful in my job, I didn't become successful in my relationship. I became successful because of the influence of other people around me, right? The connections that it created for me, the introductions that it created for me, all those things. I mean, there's plenty of words I can probably throw in that conversation, but at the end of the day, it's the same theory, right? So building a network, understand, is probably one of the most impactful things you do in your life, because if you want to find a new job, you want to meet new people for relationship purposes, social aspects, whatever you're trying to do in your life, the people around you are the connections to everyone else. I forget what the book name is, but it's basically like this idea that with like 6 or 8 people in your life, everybody in the world, meaning like that's just the way us as social beings work, right? So if you really focus on your core group of people, right? Like if you really think about like my family first, right? And I always put my family in kind of 3 categories. My family is blood, my family is friends, and my family is work. So I have a work family, meaning my coworkers. I have my friend family, which are like my core group, my friends, my groom squad. And then I have my blood family, my brothers, my mom, and my dad, my cousins, whatever, right? All those things. I want to treat them as best as possible. I don't ever want to skip a layer, right? You have to understand that number one, well, layer 0 is technically yourself. Layer 1 is then going to be your family, right? And then you just start to go outside your community, right? But if you want to be able to do these things sustainably with passion, with integrity, you need to understand that the people are your support system, right? The people are what continually push you. We are always going to be stronger than I. So building that network, number one, put yourself out there in life. Do not be, understand that the social anxiety that you have of getting out there is always going to be there. I don't like public speaking. I don't like speaking in front of a group, and I coach group training, and I run a business, and I have to do team meetings every week. And both of those make me uncomfortable. And most people would never know that from the outside, but it's just like, I internally, like, palms get a little sweaty when these things happen. So it's like, number one, you got to get out there. Number two, you then got to provide value. Value is an astronomical difference of giving versus taking, right? Like, it's okay to be taking. It's okay for you to be selling. It's okay for you to be requesting things in return. But understand that in the very, very beginning of your journey, and that might be not just weeks, it might be months, years, and even decades. Like my Instagram, for example, or my email or my thing, my podcast, like I don't sell shit on here. And the reason why is I just want to provide as much value as possible, right? And if I can just keep giving value out, and I hope that one person listens to the podcast and gets something out of it, it's a win for me. I don't have a big audience, right? I don't have, tens of thousands or millions of followers on these things. Like, yeah, sure, if it happens, it happens. But I look at it as the value that I provide. Now, if you look at like the high big businesses in the world, they have a 4-to-1 ratio of give to take. Meaning that for every 45 minutes of television you watch, 15 minutes of that's going to be commercials. For every 4 ads you see on Facebook, one of those is going to be, or every 4 posts, one of those is going to be an ad. So that's kind of like, you look at the normality of a big business, but in real life, when you think about building a network or building a strong community or like the social aspect, even if you're not dealing with business at all, just think about how can I give more? How can I provide more value? And making sure that your value is not doing it with the intention of receiving, right? Like I've always said, this is kind of like a famous quote that I've given to like myself. Nikki knows this one really well. It's like, if you open up the door and someone doesn't say thank you and you get frustrated for it, you're doing it for the wrong reason. You were doing it for a thank you. Now, it doesn't mean that can't make you feel irritated, because it is always an irritating feeling, but like you can't let that sit there and make you feel aggravated because you did it because you were a good person. You did it because you were trying to just be nice. And it's the same thing when I say about giving value. It's like you want to do it because you want to provide the value for it. It's like when people talk where they're just waiting to respond, they're not actually listening. There's no empathy in the conversation. This is something we talk about in sales or communication all the time, is like, listen with the intention of understanding where that person's at. So then you can provide a rebuttal or a conversation or something that's actually going to provide them value, because they feel that you've taken the time to listen actively, become a little bit more empathetic of their situation by putting yourself in them shoes. And then most importantly is just provide value, right? And that's one thing that I love in my job. It's like, I'm not selling snake oil. I'm selling something that I truly believe in, right? I'm selling something that, like, this is what I do for a living and I want to do for the rest of my life, because I know the impact that it has on me. I know the impact it has on people around me. I know the impact it has on my clients. It's like, why would you not want people to be fitter, healthier, better versions of themselves? Why would you not want people to be physically stronger, mentally stronger, live a long time? Like, it's like, why would I not try to sell that? I don't give a fuck if it comes off sales of you. I'm that passionate about wanting to do those things. But value doesn't come from always requesting those things. Value comes from just making sure that you're always in the shoes of making that person feel good, making that person feel wanted to listen to, being the light on those dark days for people, making them feel good. I think that's one thing that I always say with my team is, like, when you go to fill out your classes, like, how do you fill out your classes? One of my coaches at Mountain View is like, I want to like learn how to do that. I want to learn that skill set. And I was like, number one, just like keep giving more, make them feel special, make them feel like you were there for them. Don't make it feel like you just want to fill up your classes. Don't make it feel like you just want to get through the hour and clock in, clock out. Go the extra mile, do the unpaid work, and that stuff is the definition of value, right? So I hope you guys get something out of it. I just wanted to kind of share this because this is something this week that I was thinking about a lot. It's just like, man, the power of a network is like one of the things that moves the needle faster in life than anything else. It's not the money that I make. It's not anything else that I do. It's just like the people that I have around me. But that requires work. That requires work to keep them, and that requires work to continually build that network. Hope this helps. Take care, and I'll see you guys next week.